Alright guys, in today's video we have a brand new meta report for the brand new meta. If you would please leave a like or a comment. This takes a very long time, despite what some people think. It's not just inputting all these numbers, even though this is a lot of squares to input numbers in. It's finding the sprites, organizing the data, making this make sense, filling in the, finding different graphics, all kind of stuff. So that would be really appreciated. So I'm just going to hop right into it. The obvious winner of the first slew of tournaments is Darkrai Magnezone. It essentially has a completely winning rate against everything except for Greninja Drud. So right now it's a great pick. I will give the caveat that a lot of these decks on here have a very low amount of games to pull from. So some of these statistics are really weird. Like for instance, the Yanmega into Lucario is 100% win rate, but there was only like 2 matches. So, but I wanted to put Infernape and Lucario on here because I know people were excited about them, and just wanted to see what they were kind of up to. So Darkrai, instead of putting the mirror matches all at 50%, I'm putting their win rates in general here, and so we have a 60.54% win rate for Darkrai Magnezone, which is fantastic. Obviously, into the Weavile variant, it wins at 63%. Crushes Palkia, Vaporeon at basically 60%. Wins against Zard pretty favorably at almost at 57%. It's wins against Gyarados at 54%. I'm assuming a lot of that has to do with you just ping down the Gyarados a few times. You have an electric attacker. You don't have to attack into their Drud, things like this. Obviously destroys Mewtwo at over almost an 81% win rate. Slightly beats Executor Celebi. I think if the Executor players get rid of Celebi and they start running like Butterfree or Shamans, then I think Executor becomes extremely favored. Even more favored against the Yanmega versions. Very favored into Pikachu. Pikachu is essentially dead, by the way. Almost an 85% win rate, which is absolutely insane. 76% win rate against Dialga, excuse me. We have the only deck it loses to very badly, which is Greninja Darkrai. We are destroying Infernape at almost 70%. We are beating Lucario Rampardos very well. I will say that Lucario Rampardos has a very interesting matchup spread for how little it's represented. I think if it gets some more representation, it's going to climb. This is essentially like the dark horse, I think, along with Darkrai Greninja. Weavile variant we already went over. It loses to the Magnezone variant. We have 52% win rate, which isn't terrible. We lose very badly to Palkia. We lose to Zard by about 2%. It says even with Gyarados. There weren't, there's a significant amount of gameplay. So yeah, this matchup just interestingly is pretty even. Crushes Mewtwo, obviously, is just another dark deck that crushes a psychic deck. No surprise there. Loses horribly to Executor because they have weakness, and Executor is really bulky, plus all the sustain, so it makes sense. Loses even worse to the Yanmega version because, Yanmega just one-shots everything, unless they have like a cape or something. And then we have 63% win rate into Pikachu, almost 70% win rate into Dialga, 31% win rate into Greninja Drud, 45% win rate into Infernape, so it loses slightly to Infernape. And then we are also crushing Lucario Rampardos. Now, Palkia has done some good results here. Oh, by the way, I'm going to show a pie chart, and then I'm going to also go over some deck lists at the end of the video of all these popular decks. So, Palkia loses really badly to Darkrai Magnezone. Beats Weavile very well, 58%. Is 53.65% win rate. Is a little favored in Zard, almost at 52%. Beats Gyarados pretty consistently. I'm assuming that's because they can Manaphy forever if they lead with Drud, and that just leads to them, just having like too much energy advantage. But it's not, it's not anything crazy. It's just like 5%. Winning into Mewtwo. A lot of these decks also run Cape, which stops Mewtwo from one-shotting. I'd like to just take this opportunity to mention that Mewtwo and Pikachu were previous kings of metas, and now they both are pretty terrible, which is great. That's what you want to see when you get a new update, right? We've got 57 almost basically 58% into Executor. We have 52% into Yanmega, 45% to Pikachu, which makes sense. Pikachu's fast and has type advantage. It's one of the only matchups Pikachu wins right now. 61.19% into Dialga, because Dialga sucks right now anyway. And then barely winning into Greninja Darkrai. And I think there was also a really small sample size. I think if there was like a little bit more games, this is probably essentially an even matchup. Very winning into Infernape at 78%, who would have thought. And loses miserably to Lucario Rampardos because they just get online way too fast. Charizard is losing to Darkrai Magnezone, slightly beating Weavile, slightly losing to Palkia. 52.33 is the win rate. Very losing to Gyarados at 40%. Essentially even with Mewtwo. Doesn't beat Executor anywhere as much as you think it would, but completely crushes the Mega Dex. And then slightly favored into Pikachu. I don't know exactly why this is, because this has always been like a really good matchup for Pikachu. I'm wondering if it's just because Fire's consistency is a little bit higher now. Oh no, I remember the reasoning. So one Fire's consistency is higher, but Dawn allows you, if you go second with Moltres and you flip at least one heads, then you can get the first attack on their lead. So you can take an aggro position against them, hit them for 70. If they hit you back, then you knock out. I think that's why Charizard's favored now. Charizard into Dialga is obviously favored because of weakness at 61%. Unfavored into Greninja Darkrai by about 7%. Favored into Infernape because Infernape can't knock out Moltres or Charizard. I say it can't knock out Moltres because the Moltres decks are running double cape. So Infernape is like basically having the same problems that Mewtwo is having, except that Mewtwo is also weak to the most popular deck. So hitting for 140, 150 is really just not good enough anymore because cape exists. And then losing very badly again to the aggro Lucario Rampardos deck. Gyarados is losing to Darkrai Magnezone, losing to Weavile, losing to Palkia. Seems to be very favored against Zard at almost 60%. And I think that's just because if you ping Gyarados a couple of times, if you ping the Charizard a couple of times, then it can be one-shot by Gyarados because of weakness. And I say a couple of times because some of them tech Potion and Cape. It is 52.27% of the meta. Very winning against Mewtwo still at 66%. Very winning against Executor at almost 60%. Completely destroys Yanmega, obviously, at almost 70%. Loses to Pikachu still. This is, I think, one of the only... I think this is like the second matchup that Pikachu wins out of the whole matchup chart. It was even into Dialga. There weren't that many games, but it was even. Losing into Darkrai Greninja. Crushes Infernape. Obviously, if we're going to crush Charizard, we're going to crush Infernape, because Infernape can't even threaten to one-shot Gyarados like Charizard can. And then favored into fighting because, they have Drud and pings from Greninja and Drud. Mewtwo is obviously losing so badly to Darkrai. If you play Mewtwo, if you just look at this real quick, Mewtwo has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 below 35% win rates. Which is insane. So the mighty have definitely fallen. Loses into Weavile, obviously, for the same reasons. Loses into Palkia because Palkia also runs Cape. And then while Mewtwo's sitting there trying to set up, Palkia is also just spamming energy. And Palkia can one-shot Mewtwo as well back. I understand that Mewtwo can run Cape as well, but definitely not... look at this. It's below 35%. Basically, even into Charizard... Very losing to Gyarados. 41.67% win rate. This is extremely... This is the biggest fall off. This is insane. Beats Executor... loses to Executor, which is what I always was saying the entire last format, because I played Executor Celebi last format. I won one tournament, top 4 others. And I really like this matchup. I think I was like 7-1 against Mewtwo in tournament. And this is more of like what I felt like the matchup always was. I think that, over time, it was just kind of like proven right. Mewtwo loses badly into Yanmega Executor, which I think is really funny. loses into Pikachu now. Before it was much closer of a, closer to 50-50, but it's just not that way anymore. I'm trying to think of the reason why that could possibly be, because it's always been like historically like a pretty even matchup, even like slightly Mewtwo favored at times. But actually, I think it's just mostly because of Cyrus, right? So Mewtwo liked to body block and keep shifting around its board presence, and now they just can't simply like absorb a hit with a Mewtwo and run away for the rest of the game. So I think this decrease in this matchup is essentially due to Cyrus existing. Mewtwo is unfavored into Dialga. Again, Mewtwo's slow, and so the same reasons that it's bad into Palkia, I think it's bad into Dialga. Also, Dialga runs capes, so Mewtwo can no longer threaten, just a side drive and in the game, which is a big deal. Very losing into Darkrai Greninja. It does beat Infernape. It's like one of the only things, it's actually the only thing that actually wins against, because Charizard's basically even. So yeah, the only deck that Mewtwo's beating right now is Infernape. So, and Infernape's not great right now anyway. And then also loses horribly to Lucario Rampardos. So yeah, Mewtwo, just don't play it. Let's see, we have Executor and a Darkrai, slightly unfavored at like 4%, crushes the Weavile variants, which is to be expected. Loses to Palkia. They probably just can't get there in time while they Manaphy up. Like if you flip like a Tails against a Manaphy, the Manaphy just gets a whole nother turn against you, right? Obviously loses horribly into Zard, loses horribly into Gyarados. Again, slightly favored into Mewtwo, as I would expect. It's 49.45% win rate, so it's almost at 50%. I think as soon as they drop the one of Celebi without the superior line and start playing Butterfree and Shaman, it'll be much better. Loses really badly to the Yanmega variant, but again, I think the Executor Celebi is just not the way to go right now. Crushes Pikachu like always, slightly favored into Dialga. Loses to Greninja Darkrai. Gets absolutely obliterated by Infernape, which we expect, in an even win rate into Lucario Rampardos. But again, I think if you add more healing tech, that also changes. Yanmega into Darkrai is losing at 41, beating Weavile at 75. Losing to Palkia slightly, getting destroyed again by really, really badly, under 35% for both Charizard and Gyarados. Beats Mewtwo at 66%, which is interesting. Beats the Executor variant, the Executor Celebi variant by about 11%. Is 52.30% win rate, which is not bad at all. It's one of the best win rates on this chart, actually. Crushes Pikachu like it always has, slightly loses to Dialga at 2%. And then crushes Greninja Darkrai, which is interesting. This is one of Greninja Darkrai's worst matchups. And obviously loses to Infernape, but a lot less so. Like, that's definitely a winnable match at 46%. And then crushes Lucario Rampardos, but again, there wasn't much data to pull from. And then Pikachu, Darkrai, Magnezone, Pikachu gets absolutely destroyed. It wins 15% of the time, so Pikachu again is just, mega garbage right now. Loses to the Weavile variant at 37%. Barely wins against a type matchup. Type advantage matchup at 54. You think it'd be way worse than that. So even like when you have type advantage, it's not doing that much better. Slightly losing to Zard. Beating Gyarados still. That's like the only reason to play it, really. Beating Mewtwo, but Mewtwo's going to be like non-existent. So essentially the only deck it really beats so far is Gyarados. Losing badly to Executor and Yanmega. It is 44.2% win rate. It also loses to Dialga at 38%. Slightly, well, more than slightly beats. It has a 58% win rate into Greninja Darkrai. And it has a good win rate against Infernape. And it has a completely losing win rate against Lucario Rampardos. So, out of this whole ramp matchup chart, Pikachu really only dominates Gyarados, Mewtwo, that's going to be non-existent, and it does very well against Greninja Darkrai and Infernape. So it's not like totally out, but it's definitely not the powerhouse it once was. And if you run into Darkrai too many times, and Darkrai's meta share is just going to continue to increase, you know, as the meta gets refined, it's going to squeeze Pikachu out, I think. Unless there's some kind of like new innovation, obviously. Dialga gets destroyed by Darkrai Magnezone at 24%. Barely gets any better against Weavile at 27%. Gets destroyed by Palkia at 36.49%. Gets wrecked by Charizard at 35%. Is basically even into Gyarados at 51%. Beats Mewtwo at 58%. Loses to Executor at 44%. Basically even into Mega at 51%. Beats Pikachu at 61% and is 46.93% win rate. Loses 36% into Greninja Darkrai. Loses very horribly into Infernape at 7.69% win rate. And also gets bodied by Lucario Rampardos at 33.33%. So Dialga has like been doing horribly. When the set first released, I was very high on Palkia. Everyone that was watching all of my you know, releases, you know, all the like sneak peek stuff and reviews, they were all telling me how much better Dialga is than Palkia, and everyone was just like so excited for Dialga. And my problem with the card is if you go first, it's significantly worse, and Palkia is way up here and is doing way better than Dialga. Not saying that Dialga can't do better over time if we find some better partners or some more partners get you know, created for the game, but yeah, it's performing how I thought it would perform. And then we have Greninja Darkrai 65% into Darkrai Magnezone. It's one of the only decks that actually very heavily beats Darkrai Magnezone, or beats it at all for that matter. Same thing with Weavile at 66%, losing into Palkia at 44%, beating Zard at 57%, beating Gyarados at 56%, beating Mewtwo at 80%, beating Executor Celebi at 64%, losing to the Mega variant at 33%, losing to Pikachu at 41%, beating Dialga at 72%, beating it has a 61.28% win rate, which is the highest win rate on this chart. Even into Infernape as of right now with the stats, and then also very much winning against Lucario Rampardos. So really overall, really great matchup spread for that deck. I'm very interested in it myself. Infernape gets destroyed by Darkrai Magnezone. Slightly favored into Weavile at 54%, loses terribly against Palkia Vaporeon because of weakness, and you know, Palkia is just naturally outside of Infernape's range, not to mention like Cape and things like this. Loses really badly to Charizard because again, Infernape can't knock out Moltres in one go because of Cape. Loses very badly to Gyarados at 31%, loses badly to Mewtwo at 36%, beats the grass decks like duh. Loses to Pikachu, wins against Dialga because it's Steel, even against Darkrai Greninja, 48.55% win rate, and even into Lucario Rampardos. So Infernape is just way less good compared to Charizard. It has way worse matchup spread, and the only things it beats are things that Charizard already beats. So you just gain percentages against basically all of their matchups if you just play Charizard instead. And I think a lot of that is just due to 150 HP marks and Cape. So even if you try and do like Spiritomb or you know, Giovanni or something like this, it doesn't matter because Cape will just still keep you out of the range. And then we have Lucario Rampardos loses really badly into Darkrai, loses badly into Weavile, beating Palkia and Zard very well, loses into Gyarados, crushes Mewtwo like everything else is this format. Basically tied into Executor, losing very badly against Mega, crushes Pikachu, crushes Dialga, loses badly to Greninja Darkrai, and 50% against Infernape, and it has a 57.93% win rate. So while the matches are very like polarizing, if you just hit the right half, your win rate's going to be a lot higher. So basically, if it seems like if they can avoid Darkrai, then you know, you're probably going to have a pretty good tournament. So you know, I think it's like kind of like the dark horse of the format, and Darkrai is going to increase in popularity, which is going to make it harder to dodge. But even if it increased to like previous Mewtwo status, you could still go a tournament and like make top cut by dodging it like at least one time and then maybe losing to it once and then still making top cut. So Lucario is definitely something I'm interested in. Greninja, Darkrai is something I'm interested in. I think if Grass incorporates Butterfree and Shamans more, or Shamans, keep saying Shamans, you know, then I think they'll be even better suited to beat Darkrai decks. Darkrai is currently 7.83% of the meta. Weavile is 5.25. Palkia is 7.65. Charizard is 6.66. Gyarados is 5.44. Mewtwo is 5.18. Executor is 4.56. Yanmega is 2.16. Pikachu is 2.57. Dialga is 2.50. Greninja Darkrai is 1.97, Infernape is 1.28, and Lucario Rampardos is 0.71. And I'm just going to give you a visual representation of that real quick. So this is what it looks like, you know, in pie chart form, so you can just get a visual representation here. Other is absolutely enormous right now at almost half, at 46%. And then we have the breakdowns here. And basically what you could expect to happen is... just like every other meta and every other card game in history, the more data we get and the more results we get, this other is going to become smaller, and then the better performing decks are going to become a larger percentage of this pie chart. So I think we're going to see a clear increase in Gyarados and Darkrai. We're going to see a reduction in Mewtwo and Pikachu. Grass decks are going to have to, you know, add some more healing. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens, but I'm starting with it like this, so that way next Monday, we can see, you know, how it's differed from, you know, this week, which I think with another week of refinement, another week of tournaments, it's going to look significantly different. All right, and now I'm just going to provide you guys with a deck list that, you know, pretty much represents what's been going on in the meta, you know, basically like the new stock lists. And we're going to be interested to see how these change over time. But yeah, general idea here, you know, do ping damage with Darkrai. Build up your Magnezone for free, because the electric energy is being generated by Magneton for free. And then you do ping damage for free with Drud. So you're doing a lot of passive damage for free while you're building up a really good attacker. You know, that's hitting for 150 after you ping them twice, which is kind of like a magical number right now. Some of them are running 2 capes instead of a Sabrina in cape, but a lot of tournament lists like to do 1 Sabrina, 1 Cyrus, because there's mind games to be had there. You have to run the 2 leaf to get the Drud out of the way, obviously. Also, if you start with Darkrai, you need to get it out of the way. 1 Pokemon communication, so you can find, you know, these evolution pieces, also the Darkrai. And then, of course, you have the research and Pokeball for consistency, but extremely solid deck list right here. The only thing you could argue is maybe a second cape. But yeah, Sabrina is also really good. Let's see. This is the Weavile variant. So Weavile does more damage once they're damaged. So you can put an energy on Darkrai, deal 20, Dawn, put the energy on Weavile, hit him for 70, which is 90 in 1 turn. Spiritomb will enable Cyrus, which is why you're doubling up on Cyrus and Spiritomb. The pinging with Spiritomb and Darkrai also seems to be, you know, a good combo. Spiritomb's also an enabler for Weavile. Rocky Helmet, just to deal more damage when they try and answer your threats. And then again, you've got the 1 communication, research, Pokeball as these like consistency tools. Then you also have Leaf to get Darkrai out of that active spot because you just need to. And now we have Palkia, Vaporeon. So you stick the Manaphy in the active spot, put 2 energy on. If you manage to draw all your pieces, you can deal 150 damage immediately, which is really fun. But even if you don't get that, you're still doing a lot of damage. Having Vaporeon be a single point attacker for 60 is never bad. Obviously, you're running Leaf because Palkia and Vaporeon both have double retreat. You're running the Misty Cheese. You're running Cyrus because, you know, damaging things and hunting them down is good. You can also, you know, deal 20 damage to all their stuff with Palkia on the bench and then sure up a win later. You got the double capes that keeps Palkia out of the range of other Palkias and Mewtwo's and, you know, a lot of other things. And then you've got, you know, Pokeball and research again for consistency. All right, next we have the Spicy Zard list that did really well. I think it was in Ursaday's tournament, did very well. The Shaman is in here to counteract all the pings, which seems really good. The Cape keeps the Moltres out of range of things like Infernape and Mewtwo and Palkia, because Moltres has the electric weakness, not water weakness. You've got the communication, so you can find your pieces more easily. You have the Sabrina for tempo rather than Cyrus, because you're trying to just hit stuff for one time to knock it out and not piece it. So Sabrina, I think, is better than Cyrus here. Notably with Dawn, if you flip more than one heads, or at least one heads with Moltres, then you can Dawn the energy off your Pokemon, attach return, and start swinging with Moltres, which is why I think it has a better matchup into Pikachu now. You've got the 2x speeds and the 1 leaf, so you can put that Moltres in the active spot more consistently to get your game plan live. And then again, you've got Pokemon Research and Pokeball for consistency. All right, next up we have Gyarados. It's still the stock list. You're still doing damage with Greninja and Drud passively while you finish them off with Gyarados. We have the Misty Cheese, we have the Leaf. Leaf was a 2 of before, now it's a 1 of with Cyrus. Because Cyrus Greninja is just a really strong combination of cards. And then you've got the 2 consistency tools as the Pokemon Research and the Pokeball. Next we have essentially a stock Mewtwo list. Now it's incorporating Cape, which I think it needs to do because Palkia exists. But yeah, don't run this deck. You're going to lose a bunch. Split of Cyrus, Sabrina, and Cape. And that's like really the only innovation here from the previous set. This is so stupid. As someone that performed really well with Executor Celebi last format, I find this to be an infuriating combination of cards that just makes no sense. You obviously should be playing Butterfree or Shamans or, you know, even just the list from, I think, last season would do better than this. Ignore this. Yanmega version, I think, is a lot more respectable because it's trying to target down Darkrai. And I understand that. But I believe we were still losing to Darkrai Magnezone, but we do beat the Weavile version, but everyone's going to be on Darkrai Magnezone. One thing I don't like about this deck is if you don't see Executor, then you're doing nothing. And so one Pokemon communication I don't think fixes that problem. So I do think this deck needs to be reimagined a little bit just to increase its consistency a little bit more. All right, now this was kind of like a spicy Pikachu Zebstrika. There's tons of Pikachu variants. I didn't go over the Pachirisu variant because it's like, you know, way low on the meta report or meta share. And you would think Raichu would be really good when you have like Weavile, you know, all these new 140 Pokemon that just aren't really seeing that much play, but Cape makes it to where, just like with Mewtwo, it's just not that strong anymore. We're building up a Magneton in the back passively. This deck's really weird, but I did want to kind of feature it because it is weird. But yeah, Pikachu's not doing well at all right now. Generally, you would see, instead of like the Magnezone line, you'd see like maybe some Zapdos and you know, some Pachirisu and then maybe some tools, but there's a lot of lists out there. None of them are doing particularly hot. Okay, and this is the Dialga Melmetal deck. Everyone was so happy to finally play Melmetal. This one had 1 Tauros, which I thought was interesting. This list did really well out of the ones I looked at, but I don't really like the Tauros much because it ruins your chances of finding Dialga, which is like the whole point of the deck. And so I don't think Tauros is worth the inconsistency. But we do have Dawn, so we can retreat the Dialga, put energy back on the Dialga again. We have the 2 Capes to get Dialga out of the range of like Mewtwo, Palkia, things like this. Notably, it also gets you out of range of Infernape, and same with Melmetal. So even the things Infernape's supposed to pick on, it's struggling a little bit sometimes because of the Cape. And now this is one of the decks I'm the most interested in. Has a really good matchup spread, but doing ping damage with everything for free essentially. Then you got the 2 Cyrus because you have so much ping. You have the 1 Leaf to get the Darkrai or the Drud out of the active spot. The consistency cards are in big time with 2 Communication, 2 Pokeball, 2 Research. Really love that split. And then we have the 1 Potion, I'm assuming, to make you less vulnerable to Cyrus. Let's say if you start with like Darkrai in the active spot, and so does your opponent, but they're going second. They put an energy on their Darkrai, ping your Darkrai. This eliminates that being a target for the rest of the game. This is just Infernape, right? You just run the Infernape line, the Moltres, the 2 Communications, the Dawn, so you can refill the Infernape so you can attack multiple times, you know, without taking a break, like consecutively. That's the word I'm looking for. You also have 2 Capes for the Moltres for the reasons we mentioned previously in this video. We've got the 2 Giovanni to try and hit 150, even though Cape will still get them out of that range. So this is kind of like Like, let's say you're doing 150, that would make it to where you could one-shot Dialga, which is what I imagine the Giovannis are in here still for, you know, regardless. So I understand what they're going for, but just not a great matchup spread. And now we've got one of the more interesting decks where we have Lucario, Rampardos. Rampardos does 130, with Lucario does 150. It's only one energy, super efficient. Hitmonchan becomes super far-fetched when Lucario's on the board. We got the 2 communications for consistency, the Pokeballs, the research, the split between Sabrina and Cyrus, so we can still tempo and hunt things down, and the fossil, of course. So really liking that list. And now, this isn't a deck I covered, but I was just trying to find a cool Luxray list, but apparently this one was like farming Magnezone. I'll have to test this out myself and see what's going on. Let's see. But yeah, guys, that's it for the meta report. Would really appreciate any support on this video. Like I said, this takes quite a long time to put together, and hopefully you guys, you know, have something to take away from this. And I will see you guys soon.